Perhaps the cleanest, most simple template in the real estate toolbox is when you can involve yourself directly with the seller and the seller becomes the beneficiary of a private created note. Let me explain. Let's say that this person has a property, it's worth $100,000. And this particular tool works best if they owe 10% of the value of the property or less. In other words, a free and clear property, awesome, beautiful. That works in every way. But let's say they owed $5 or $6 or $7 or $10,000. The tool can still work because the criteria is simply this. You're offering the seller a low down payment. I like to stick to 10% or less. 10% or less of a down payment. The balance of that purchase price is in the form of a promissory note. That promissory note is an IOU. It's an IOU between you, the maker of the note, and the seller, who's the beneficiary of the note. Okay? Now let's start right there and just let's poke some holes in this. Why would somebody who owns a free and clear property, why would they sell that property for a low amount down and be the benefactor of a note? Well, you know, this is where we've got to get out of our own way, because there are those people that say, well, no one would do that. And I laugh at that thought, because I've for 45 years, we'd be here for the next 6 months if I told you every time someone did that, right? But there's reasons why they do it, okay? Well, let's just start with some basic high-level reasons, and you'll start seeing that given these conditions, the likelihood of this proposal is not only not ridiculous, it's really serving the seller. One, if this is a non-owner occupied property that they've had for a long time, an investment property of theirs that you're purchasing, they may have a serious capital gains issue on their hand. The installment sale is one of only 2 ways to defer capital gains, right? You don't pay capital gain on principal until you receive the principal gain. But by having it come to you monthly on an installment sale or quarterly or annually, or whatever the terms of the installment sale is, you're not paying tax on the gain until you receive the gain. So you can do some real planning around how to deal with the capital gain tax. The second thing is that you look at the alternative. If somebody sold that exact same property for cash, they pay their capital gain tax, then they take the remaining money and they try to go out in the marketplace to create an interest income on what's left. Well, you're going to create an interest income for them by virtue of the terms of the note. And oftentimes at a much more favorable fixed rate than they can get in the marketplace, right? Let's say that CDs and money market funds are around 2% today. Well, could I offer them 4% and get a great interest rate from my perspective, but also give them double what the marketplace could achieve in interest? Not only are they receiving double, but they're receiving on interest income on money that they would have had to send to the government for capital gains tax. So it's kind of like getting interest income on money that isn't even theirs. The installment sale is an excellent, excellent strategy for a lot of really intelligent people selling their real estate. You've got a purchase price, somewhere around 10% down, the balance on a promissory note. Now that promissory note, that IOU, we've got to go into some details, right? And you're going to have to associate, first and foremost, an interest rate on that note. What's a fair interest rate that you're willing to pay? Now, of course, you're going to reverse engineer this to know what you can pay in terms of what you need to pay or not to exceed to pay, so that your rental income, if you're going to keep this as an investment property, your rental income not only pays for the committed payment that you've committed to, but taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, management, etc. So you're going to do a pro forma analysis to know what you're able to pay them, and you're going to offer an interest rate that allows you, to pay that amount within your budget, okay? I choose to write it up that at this interest, my payment shall be interest only or more. Okay, interest only or more is a phrase. It sounds so innocent, but trust me, there's a lot more to that phrase than meets the eye. But the simple analysis would say that this payment agreement allows me to pay interest on the outstanding principal at whatever interest rate we've agreed, annum interest paid monthly, okay? But it also allows me to pay principal if I choose to create an amortization for myself to pay this building off in a certain period of time. Now, of course, if I do pay principal, that may evoke them paying a capital gains tax on the amount of principal I pay in a given year. Keep that in mind. I create a note. It's a note in this case for $90,000. An interest rate, let's say the interest rate is 3 to 4.5%. I've got a payment of interest only or more. I might put an all outstanding principal on note due and payable beneficiary at a certain period of time in the future, say 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe I'll agree to amortize that payment over 20 or 30 years. Not just an interest only payment, but a committed amortized payment. I would also like the ability to make sure that I could amortize it though or more. I want the ability to pay off this note without a prepayment penalty at any time, okay? I also, as I'm developing the terms of this note, I'm going to tell you right now there's all kinds of fillers and options that you can put in here. It's kind of like buying the car. You get the car, you get the steering wheel, a seat, and a few side mirrors. But if you want the leather seats, that's an upgrade. If you want heated seats, that's an upgrade. Promissory notes and collateral agreements are like that they can start very basic, very straightforward, and then there are things that you can add on to them that sort of enhance them and make them much more useful. In the simple version of this template, it is simply a down payment, the balance on a note, an interest rate, a committed payment, an outstanding principal due and payable. Those are the basics of this stripped down template. Of course, then we move from there to collateral agreements. And in the simple template, this particular note will be collateralized by a deed of trust on the subject property, legal description attached. Now let's look at some variables in here. There's the stripped down version, right? A note collateralized by a deed of trust with 10% or less down. Let's look at some of the things that we could do to this template that would change it from being a kind of the basic version to something much more enhanced. For example, just throwing this out, what if we added on the note a first right of refusal clause? The right to purchase the note should the beneficiary elect to sell note prior to maturity. That would change some things. Notes are tenderable items. They can be taken by the beneficiary out to the world of people who buy notes and sold. I may want to retain a right of refusal to purchase that note should they sell it prior to maturity. Think on that. Let's talk about the collateral agreement, right? Initially, the collateral is the subject property, legal description attached, but does it necessarily have to stay there? Does the collateral always have to be that property for the note? What if I put in a substitution of collateral clause, allowing me to substitute the collateral for the note to a different piece of real property? Interesting. That changes the equation. What if I put in an exchange of note clause? The ability to take this $90,000 note and divide it up into a $40,000, a $40,000, and a $10,000. 3 notes in exchange for 1. Why might I do that? What is the value of doing that? You see, when we really study this template and the moving parts, you see that there's There's all kinds of things we can do to add on and enhance the value of our note negotiation and our collateral negotiation, right? Those are really, really important things that we get to know. Those add-ons, as we affectionately call them, the lettuce and tomatoes, right? Those add-ons can change the entire picture of this very simple frame. So keep that in mind. Free and clear properties, that's your best whiteboard. When people don't owe anything on their properties, there's a lot you can do in terms of proposal. The more they owe, the more encumbrances on the properties, the more limited you are as to what you can do. You'd have to use a different tool. This tool is for someone who owes very little or nothing on their property, where you can give them a 10% down payment, the balance on a note, the subject property becomes the collateral for the note. That's simple. Good luck with this tool.